Hello friends, thanks for joining me today. I have finally completed the Shades of Magic series by V.E. Schwab. I'm very excited to review A Conjuring of Light and talk about it. This is mostly going to be a spoiler-filled discussion review, so heads up if you haven't read it yet. If you haven't, go and please read it. Finish the series because it was great. This is also fulfilling a prompt from the Owl Crate Reading Challenge, which was L for last book in a series. So I'll start with a brief spoiler-free summary. The third and final book starts right where the second book leaves off, with Kell having been whisked away to White London by Oshka and Holland's body being taken over by Oseron, the living embodiment of the magic that destroyed Black London. Oseron travels to Red London and starts to infect the city and the people with the intention of basically proliferating and taking over everything. That's essentially the plot of this final book. Kell and Rye and everyone else have to find a way to destroy Oseron and stop him from spreading. So despite the bustle of activity at the start of this book, it was a little hard for some reason for me to get through the first 200-ish pages. It's a pretty chunky book, because it felt like I was reading in circles a little bit. Once Oseron arrives in Red London, which happens pretty quickly, the threat is established. Like, okay, right, gotta stop him. They put up a barrier around the castle to keep out his power and try to figure out their next move. And now that I think about it, I've mentioned this before, but I've never been a big fan of sieges in books. By nature, they're pretty boring. There's a lot of waiting happening. And the first, this first third or so is basically a siege. I was waiting for the plot to move forward, but we were just like meandering around characters, moping around, and I was just like anxious for the plot to get going. But really, once Kell and Lila and others finally leave the capital, it just snowballs and gets more and more interesting and exciting, and I couldn't put it down. The rest of it is so good that it's enough to bump, my 4.5 rating up to 5 stars for Goodreads. It was excellent. All right, so if you're still here, we are going to get into details and spoiler territory now. So somehow, and honestly, this is just me not being very perceptive, I guess, I didn't call Lila being Antari. I knew she was going to be special in some way based on the comments that characters like Tierin made, but I figured it would be something different than Antari. I don't know. It was only after Oshka shattered her glass eye at the start of the book and, attention was continuously being drawn to it that I was like, oh, her eye was probably black before she lost it, huh? She still walks that fine, cocky/confident line for me. At times I roll my eyes at her dialogue or her smug face, and other times I'm like, oh yeah, that's badass. I'm pleased with the way that Kell and Lila's relationship panned out. I wasn't sure how I felt about it in the second book because I had really liked their platonic relationship from book 1, but it was good. It wasn't like a super romantic relationship, but it was passionate and raw, which fits both of them much better anyway. And I'm glad we finally learned more about Holland. He's just so tragic. I feel bad for him. First your brother tries to kill you, then your girlfriend, and then you finally make a friend and things seem to be looking up, and then he's murdered and you're enslaved. Really tragic. I don't love Holland because he's cold and a dick at times, but his backstory and motivations are very compelling, and I really like how he retains his personality and characteristic behaviors throughout the entire series. In this book, he doesn't suddenly become fast friends with Kell or Lila or Alucard. He really stays true to himself and his motivations. There are a few different side character deaths in this book, and I actually cared about basically all of them. Poor Hastra and Leon are both killed on their way back from the black market, and that sweet merchant Kala is burned away by Oseron, and you get to know more about King Maxim and Queen Amira, and they're both murdered. Like, I think it's really impressive when an author can actually make you care about side characters. So, you know, thanks V.E. Schwab, thank you for hurting me like that. There's a whole lot of sad in this series, really. Like, it's sad to see the way that it hurts both Kell and Rye to be linked the way they are. Obviously, Holland and White London are sad. There were many times where Alucard and Rye's rocky relationship was sad. The way Lila runs away from anything that can bring her happiness or comfort. All of the deaths in this book. Schwab's writing style is pretty straightforward and accessible, but it still evokes a lot of emotion, and I love it. The floating black market was very cool and magical and interesting. I liked seeing so many characters interacting with each other and learning about their histories and motivations. The moments where we flash back to Grey London with that guy who inherited Baron's Tavern, were both charming and tense. I just really enjoyed every part of this book except for the first couple hundred pages where I think it just dragged on a little too long. I really liked the ending. It was truly bittersweet, especially with Holland. Their adventures left everyone with scars in one way or another, but it was also hopeful and beautifully written. And I guess going back to the Grey London bits, I was a little curious about how, because Grey London is supposed to be without magic. It's just our boring normal world. But in this book, Oseron's magic starts to seep through. And I was just kind of wondering, I don't know, that wasn't really addressed about how his magic could get into Grey London. I guess there was nothing saying that Grey London could never have magic, but I don't know, I guess I maybe would have liked a little bit of explanation as to how his magic had started to seep through into that world in the first place, but it's okay. So those are my thoughts on A Conjuring of Light. I enjoyed it a lot, and I'm very glad the last book was good and not a letdown, ended the series on a high note, if a little melancholy as well. I will be doing a whole series review on the Shades of Magic trilogy eventually, but suffice it to say that I totally recommend this series. I love it. Schwab continues to impress me, and I can't wait to keep reading more books by her. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please let me know if you have finished the series and your final thoughts, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye!